Welcome to our first 10-minute talk where we riff on things that we think about in therapy and things that we see in our life.
And conversations that we have ongoing. We just thought it would be interesting for everybody to hear a little bit about our conversations and how they go. And we've recently been talking about competition and how it can show up in relationships, and not just intimate relationships, friendships, partnerships, working relationships. What is the appropriate amount of competition, and where does it show up, and where do you see it?
Well, let's see. So I think it might be important to maybe narrow it down for this purpose of this because this is 10 minutes, right? So in a relationship, that's probably the worst place for it to show up. I can see it can be healthy, but let's talk first about the parts where we think it's unhealthy.
Mhm.
I think it's important to honor your partner's successes. And when we're feeling like my success is being not shining through as much.
You mean you're withholding your
Yeah,
success, or?
I mean, if a person, so in a relationship, when a partner shows up, she's doing awesome, right? She's making more money or whatever. And the other partner assumes that's a reflection somehow on them in a
Mm,
negative way.
right.
That's a good place to start checking in. So yeah,
Yeah, so not allowing your ambitions to curtail your support of your partner,
right.
your desire to see them succeed in every way
Yeah,
possible to them.
yeah,
Yeah, that can be challenging. I certainly have conversations with people often about what's the best way to honor my partner and their ambitions, and how do I deal with these feelings that are coming up in me when I watch them succeed and I haven't had that level of success myself.
hmm yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Also, I think keeping tally.
Mm,
So
a
on the
scorecard.
Yeah, so I'm the better partner because I do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And that sometimes that's sometimes that can be really hard, especially if that's true, that
Mm,
the other partner's not doing anything.
mm,
I do think it's important to first start and check in with, like, is that actually true
yeah,
that
yeah.
my partner's, for example, like I might be doing more like of cooking or whatever,
Sure.
where you're changing the light bulbs and you're like changing the heater
Yeah.
fan, or I don't know what it is that you're doing.
Stereotypes here,
Right?
folks.
But you're doing things, and I may not even be tuned
Cognizant.
into
Yeah,
what
seeing
you're
it.
you're
Yeah, yeah.
doing. So if I get in my head about, oh, I'm doing all this other stuff, and that stuff's, especially when that stuff's really important to me and maybe
Mm,
not as important to you, I may have not communicated my expectations for what the partnership should look like, or we may not have shared values. That I think that's an important
mm,
point, because your value may not you, but in a relationship,
right,
the value may not be like we have completely clean floors all the time for one of the partners,
right.
and it might be super important to the other partner.
Well, I was going to say, what do you do if a partner puts a really high value on something
Hmm.
and then their partner isn't following through?
Right. I think that's a breaking point for a lot of people,
Yeah,
where the expectation is the house remains immaculate, or it's
right.
very clean, or like these are my standards and those should be your standards. I think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
can
yeah.
be a really, really hard place for people to
So if somebody's at an impasse like that and they're stuck,
yeah.
how do they work on that?
So I think one of the things is to recognize, one, why is this so important to me? Right? There might be some trauma there. There might be some like unrealistic expectations put on by your family, that you're a family of origin, that
Sure.
your house remain clean all the time, or somebody's explosive. So like
Yeah.
that could be a thing to work on right there, is like, is the house, or whatever it is,
So
the yard work,
there's a deep
whatever.
psychological reason
There's a
for that.
reason
Right, right.
that might be a
Maybe even connected to trauma.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of times I think it can be.
yeah.
Not always, but it could just be the expectation is that the house is ready for people to come over all the time, and that's an important value to me. But it may not be to your partner.
Right.
So
So how do you
that
work
can
on
be
that?
okay that you guys have different values. It can be, but that doesn't mean that your partner has to share that same value as you.
Yeah, I think for me the important piece there is how do competing values, if they're competing in that sense, get in alignment? Because if there's a constant need from one partner to show up in a certain way,
Hmm.
we don't need to keep it about the house being clean or whatever, but
Hmm.
that's a good example. How do you create a space for communication where that isn't an impasse and resentment isn't
Hmm.
building up? And I think it requires conversations. I think
Yeah.
it requires people to I used this word scorecard a minute ago. I think it means putting away that scorecard a
Hmm.
little bit, making space for your level of discomfort, and then having the conversation with your partner. This is important to me, and this is why. And then maybe finding middle ground if
Yeah.
possible. I don't mean to reduce the solution to every marital problem in this sense, or partnership relationship problem in this sense, to just more communication, but so often we think our partners have read our minds and know.
Or that we've communicated.
Right,
Because I yelled at him about the thing, or I
right.
yelled at her and I told her, like, that's sorry, that doesn't count as communicating.
Oftentimes when we're yelled at, we
Yeah.
kind of shut down
Yeah.
and retreat anyway, and we're not absorbing. So
Yeah.
I guess one of the things I wanted to say is that if you're finding yourself in a spot where there are these expectations that are misaligned and you're starting to keep score with each other, I'm doing this, so they should do that.
Hmm.
Check in and say, have we had a conversation?
Yeah. I think another thing that's important here is that if you can recognize why that's so important to you
Mm.
and bring your partner in why,
So if it's important for me to have a clean house,
yeah,
why is
and
that
and
happening?
you're saying, well, my dad used to scream at me
Right.
every time, and I go, oh, so when I make the house messy, you might feel this like hyper vigilance of like
Yeah.
and shut down in that way. So now that I can see that, and it's not necessarily my responsibility to fix that for you every time, but the fact that I'm aware and tuned into it might help me understand why that's so important to you and maybe like contribute more to that or to be less frustrated um when you're wanting to be clean, but also maybe even help you work through it
Yeah.
in
And identify.
some way. And this can be hard when it's we're doing therapy one-on-one with somebody versus like
A
a
couple
couple
or
therapy,
family unit or family
but this is
therapy.
an important point, I think, in really like softening into relationship because I often hear like we're not communicating. Like, sure, and also you want a deeper relationship. You want like that relationship where you can see the pain in your partner, and rather than
Yeah.
like coming at them, you could soften into it and be like, "Oh, I see. Let me help you with that."
The empathy
Yeah,
in a way. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I can see why my behavior was really making you feel shut down. And so let's work on that together. It's like level like three, right? Of being in a relationship. It's not like that first communication, that
Yeah.
initial like learning how to communicate.
Yeah, well, and again, I know I keep shouting out the Gottmans when we have couples conversations, but I really like their framework around building a house. And this stuff we're talking about is much later in the relationship
Hmm.
building. It starts with trust and commitment, and that's kind of what I'm hearing as you're describing that. If you don't come with that softness, that commitment to the relationship, that trust in the relationship, it's hard to cram values before that.
Yeah.
That really comes as a later piece. Once you're, I often will say to folks when I'm working with them, do you feel like it's you and your partner against the rest of the world, and that you have that sort of
Yeah.
team mindset? And if you don't have that trust and commitment, it's hard to try and build on top of that everything else
I think
that you
that's a
want
good signal. I didn't even talk about you, but that's a good signal when it's, are we competing against the rest of the world or are we like
at each other. Yeah,
competing against each other? When
yeah,
if you're feeling like your partner's the thing
yeah, that you're
that you
competing
have
with,
to butt up heads against or like tit for tat
right?
with,
Because the world's hard enough, and
yeah,
there's so much coming at us all the time. If you feel at odds with your partner, there's really no place of safety for you to
sure.
be.
And I think some people start therapy and they're like, oh, that's where I'm at. Well, that must not be the right relationship for me.
Right.
But the thing is relationships are really, really hard
Mm.
and they take a lot of work. So when we see that, that doesn't necessarily mean, well, I better split and run. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no, there's ways to get there to start being as as non-competitive as possible. And uh, part of that is recognizing when your own pain's getting triggered.
Right.
And
So if that scorecard is coming out, if that competition is coming out, there's likely something behind it that's driving it that you care about. We just did a little clip about we hurt where we care,
mhm.
and that's probably coming out. The pain is pushing itself into your experience, and it's building up toward resentment because you care about something.
I think that's such an important
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Yeah.
As in, I noticing how much pain I'm in right now when you say whatever little thing, right?
Right.
You say, oh, you could make a little, well, why don't you try a little harder at work
Yeah.
or make a little,
Clean up
whatever
the
that
house,
thing
make a
is.
little more money,
There's a,
show up more.
it has so much more to do with just this baggage of whatever you're bringing in from the past few years
Yeah.
of living in this culture, this society where you're supposed
And
to
then,
be a provider or whatever. And then that moment
yeah.
is, of course, it feels explosive
And it's your partner that you're with all the time. So, of course, you're taking much of that energy out on them because they are the most immediate.
because you care about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the most immediate touch point for all of that.
It's a signal for sure.
Yeah. So if you're dealing with any of that, feeling like you're in a place where you're stuck in your relationship and you're noticing the scorecards coming out, maybe check in a little bit.
Yeah. Identify why it's coming up and where the pain points are. Yeah.
What it's trying to communicate. Well, that's our first 10-minute talk. We're going to try and post these maybe monthly. We'll see. We're kind of discussing the idea. Yeah, like we'll clue you into some of our chats here. So thanks for joining us on the first one.